Hey guys, and welcome to the video. Here today, this is going to be kind of an update to the video I did a few days ago regarding Nintendo's lawsuits that they filed against some of the resellers of Team xecuter's mod chips. So there's information we're going to cover here today that we didn't in that video. For example, we now know who the other 8 resellers are, at least the names of the sites themselves. We know the amounts that Nintendo is seeking per infringement of their intellectual copyright properties, as well as how much they're seeking for each device that circumvents their security. And it's not just the mod chips that they are going after, they're going after other stuff as well. So we'll cover that. I'll also give you some examples on how much this could end up costing these resellers. And then we'll go ahead and I'll show you how this has affected some of the resellers that are still out there and whether or not they are promoting the pre-order of the mod chips and whatnot. So remember to like the video, because even though some of this information here you may not like, you may not be fans of Nintendo suing these resellers or whatever, I'm just reporting the stuff to you. I'm bringing you the information. Whenever you like the videos, it not only shows support to the channel, but it most importantly keeps me motivated to keep bringing you videos like this, as well as tutorials, the hacking, modding, news and info, and a bunch of other stuff. It really does go a long way. So anyway, guys, let's go ahead and jump into it, get started. By the way, this is going to be primarily all audio. So if you just want to listen on your earbuds, headphones, or on the speaker while you do something else, feel free to do so, because there's not really much to see, but there is quite a bit of detail to cover. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And our first stop brings us here to Walolo.net, and this article that came out yesterday, they go over just some of the key points and highlights of the 2 Nintendo lawsuits. A lot of what's mentioned here, I actually already covered it in the video I did a few days ago, but there are a couple of things or a few things that we did not cover that definitely are important. For example, we now know that there's a total of 9 resellers that are being sued. Now, one of them we already know, which is UberChips. UberChips has their own lawsuit going on. However, the other 8 are being sued in just one lawsuit altogether. Their names are listed here. Well, the names of those sites, you can see them listed right here. Also, most of these sites have pretty much shut down. They are currently inaccessible. And I think there's 1 or 2 more that I checked that they've pretty much gone off the grid, and yeah, they're not there anymore, that are not listed on here. The other thing is that when you come down here to the bottom, if you click on this link here, you will get the paperwork, the legal paperwork that was submitted to the court regarding the first lawsuit that has the 8 sites. What's interesting here is that it doesn't name specifically who the defendants are. It keeps them anonymous. So it says does 1 through 20. That doesn't mean does. That means those like Jane Doe, John Doe. So we know that there's 20 defendants that Nintendo is suing against, who I guess between all of them run these 8 online shops. And then of course you have this link here, which takes you to the paperwork for the lawsuit against UberChips specifically, and in this case the person who owns it is Tom Dilts Jr. Okay, so now back here we see that there are 2 amounts that Nintendo is seeking. They are seeking $2,500 for every circumvention device, and they are seeking $150,000 for every copyright violation of its intellectual property. First, let's examine the $2,500 and exactly what that means. Okay, so this is going to get a little bit tedious here because I'm going to go into specifics and give you some amounts and stuff just so you get an idea of what these resellers are dealing with. So Nintendo is defining the circumvention devices as being pretty much four things, which is the SXOS operating system, the SXOS or the SX Pro Kit, which is the dongle that comes with the SXOS license, and either one of the two mod chips, meaning the SX Core or the SX Lite. Those four things is what they are identifying as quote unquote circumvention devices. Each one carries the $2,500 penalty, meaning that if a reseller took in 100 pre-orders of a mod chip, that's $250,000 that they will be on the hook for potentially. If they took 400 pre-orders, that's $1 million. Now, maybe these companies can say, well, you know, we actually didn't sell them. They were only pre-orders. Of course, Nintendo can argue that they took in money either in part or the full amount in order to hold the mod chip when they got it for the consumer and then send it to them, so they can argue it was already sold. Who knows? I doubt these things are going to go to court anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. But that's the mod chips. Then you have SXOS, the operating system, and the Pro Kit. These things have been around for like I think 2 years already, and for each one of those is $2,500. Those things are not pre-orders. Those are actual sales. If these resellers, let's say over the last 2 years, have sold 100 licenses and or 100 of the SX Pro kits, that's 250 grand for every 100. So if these companies over the 2 years, in combination of licenses and SX Pro kits, have sold 400, that means that's $1 million. If they sold 1,000, that's $2.5 million. And this 2,500 applies to all 9 resellers because all 9 of them were selling the SXOS, SX Pro Kit, and they were taking pre-orders for the mod chips. Now remember, none of these resellers are Walmart or McDonald's or Coca-Cola. They don't make nowhere near anything remotely close to that amount of money. These are small entities. Usually they're just individual type deals that are set up. Even if there's multiple of them, it's usually 2 or 3 here or there that are scattered. These amounts will easily not only break these resellers, more than likely it will break the bank for the ownership as well, unless they have, you know, other ventures in something else. Anyway, that is what this is designed to do. That's why they're going after these amounts. Okay, so now what does that $150,000 mean? Let's go ahead and look at that. All right, so now that 150 grand, that actually only applies to 5 of the sellers on this list, not all 9. One of them is not Uber chips, so that means that all 5 come from that first lawsuit where there's 8 resellers there. So 5 of them, in addition to the SXOS and mod chip stuff, also were selling things like flashcards and other stuff that came preloaded with games. And you already know where this is going. Yes, they had ROMs in them, and of course many of these ROMs are first party Nintendo games. This 150 grand is for each and every single game. So for example, in the SNES ROMs, if Donkey Kong Country was there, that's 150 grand. If Mario Kart was there, that's another 150 grand. If there was a Zelda game there, and I think SNES had a couple of them, let's say both of them were there, that's another 300 grand. We're already at around what, 600 grand for just a few games. If there are 10 SNES ROMs that are first party Nintendo games, that's $1.5 million. And if there's 20 games, that's 3 million. 40 games are 6 million. And that's just SNES ROMs. We're not even covering NES, which were there, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and N64. So every single one of the games that are Nintendo first party games on any of those systems, any of those ROMs, that's 150 grand per game. Again, they have to be first-party Nintendo games, but I'm sure that there's at least 100 of them between all those systems. And at 100, that's $11.5 million. At 200, it's 23 million. That, of course, is going to absolutely destroy those 5 sites or those 5 sellers, their ownership, and all of that stuff. And I'm pretty sure this will not go to court because, of course, there is no reason on earth where you would be legally allowed to sell copyrighted ROMs without permission. And we already know last year that when Nintendo took on that individual who ran those 2 sites and Nintendo filed a lawsuit against him, they settled everything out of court for over $12 million. And those 2 sites were not selling ROMs. He was making money from the sites, from advertising or whatever, but there were no ROMs being sold. Here, these 5 sites sold the ROMs. Nintendo ordered the devices, they got them in their possession, and the games were there. So yeah, for those 5, it's way worse. And again, we're not even tacking on the SXOS stuff or the mod chip stuff on top of the ROMs yet. So you add that in there and, well, you can just forget about it. And we are going to wrap things up by just showing you a couple of things here regarding these resellers. First, Uberchips, which has removed everything from their site, and they just posted up this notification here basically saying they were sorry because of the turn of events. However, they are going to be refunding everyone who pre-ordered the mod chips their full amount of money back to them, and they did say it'll take about a few weeks for you to see that refund. When you come over to Team xecuter's site and you click on their where to buy, of course you get the list of all these resellers. Now what's interesting here, starting with these USA ones, all of the USA ones have, the ones that are still working, have removed the mod chip advertisement completely. Half of them no longer work. The Canadian one, Flashcarda, doesn't work either. The site is gone. Now I went ahead and I selected maybe like 10 other sites completely at random. I don't even know which 10 they were, but you can see it's a pretty extensive list. I picked just 10 at random, and of the 10 I picked, 3 of them did not work, and the other 7 I did not see any pre-orders being taken on those 7 sites for the mod chips. What's interesting further still is that at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and especially over the last month or two, almost all of these sites, when you went to them, like front and center on the main page, they were taking the pre-orders for the mod chips. And now, at least of the ones I've seen, they're not even advertising them anymore. Now, I didn't cover all of them. There's a lot here. I'm sure some are still taking the pre-orders, but I can clearly see the difference between, a few months ago, a couple of months ago, and now what's happened after these lawsuits. It's definitely seemed to have had at least some effect, which I'm sure Nintendo is completely happy about. And that's pretty much going to do it for the video, guys. I just want to let you know what was going on and just to give you some examples of these amounts that Nintendo is going after and how they can add up to a really large sum of money. And more than likely, this is just going to get settled out of court because it just would be absolutely beneficial for these resellers not to go to court, where they can get slapped with the full amounts that Nintendo is seeking. Whereas if they do it out of court, they can usually settle for a lot less, and that's probably what they're going to end up doing, but it's still going to cost them a lot of money. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate you as always. If you found anything here useful, helpful, informative, entertaining, or you just want to throw some love or appreciation at the channel, as always, the best way to do any of those things is just to hit that like button. Again, even if you don't like what Nintendo is doing, that's beyond my control, guys. I'm just the messenger reporting the stuff to you. Hit that like button. Much love going out to all of you. Be careful, be safe, but have fun, and we will see you on the next one.